Today, what I actually want to talk about is my thoughts on price charts. Price charts, like things like card ladder, market movers, whichever price charting tool you use. I that's what I want to talk about today, and I may be in the minority of this, or I might be within a small group, but I no longer use those things. I when I first jumped back into the hobby, I was on board with card ladder. I was on board with market movers. I was on board with those types of things. That was pretty cool. That you're able to, keep track of your collection, chart the price of your collection, see what prices certain cards are going for. I thought that was a pretty cool concept. But then as I started getting deeper and deeper back into my love for the hobby, back into my love for collecting, I kind of realized that a lot of that is irrelevant for me. Um, you know, my whole thought process is always to go with my gut. And when I started trying to invest in things and try to have an investor mindset, I kind of stopped going away from my gut feeling on things and started to focus on what a lot of people are talking about and looking at these charts, trying to find cards that are undervalued, trying to find when to buy, when to sell. Like those types of things kind of took me away from my natural feeling towards this hobby, this space. And lately, what I've been doing a lot is just going off of feel, going off of my gut feeling as to which cards I want to buy, which cards I want to add in my collection, regardless of the price. So the number one thing that I try to do is that when I target a particular card to add to the collection or add as a long-term investment piece or a long-term hold, I tend to, at that point, look at what price they're selling for. What are the recent comparables? I don't care about what's happened in the past. I don't care about where I think that card's going to go in the future. It's more about what price is it now, and am I comfortable paying that price now? At what price point or what's the most I'm willing to spend on a particular card based off of recent comparables. I think that's been my mindset lately. And when I try to target a card, I look at recent comps. And you can use anything to look at recent comps. You don't really have to use apps or tools like Card Ladder or Market Movers to be able to find that. Usually those things are, it's an aggregate of data to give you an average of the cost of the card. If you want to know what cards are going for, you can easily just pull up, eBay sold listings, 130point.com, any of these types of tools to be able to find out what the last sales were. And I usually look at the last recent sales. I try not to go too far back to kind of see, is this card trending up or is this card trending down? I usually go with my gut in terms of what's the price now and what's the most I'm willing to spend on this card. Because once I buy that card to hold, that's it. I don't worry too much about the value of the card anymore. And I think that's part of the problem that I had when I was using Card Ladder and Market Movers. I was so tied to the value of the card day by day. Every day I would look and check what the value of my collection is, check to see if it's gone up, check to see if it's gone down. We're at a point now in the hobby where not everything's going to go crazy and jump up every day and fluctuate every day, up and down, up and down, up and down. It kind of adds what I like to call unnecessary stress to a hobby that you should sit back and enjoy. Now, like I said earlier, we're at this point where we're not going to see those wild swings, especially for mid-end cards, low-end cards, even at some high-end cards. The only sets I think, or the only areas where I think you might see large fluctuations are on the ultra high-end, where things are constantly going up. Sure, if a player gets injured or something happens, their cards may drop dramatically, might dip dramatically, but that's a risk that we're willing to take when we buy these cards. But yeah, I try to just focus on what I want to buy, at what price do I want to buy it, and is it reasonable? And then once I have it in my collection, I just sit on it, not worry too much about the valuation, because if we're at this certain steady state where cards will slowly rise over time, if you're buying the right cards to hold long term, they'll slowly rise over time. And at that point, it's irrelevant whether you try to find the right time to sell or the right time to buy. at least in my opinion, that's the way I feel. So yeah, I don't really use those apps anymore. You know, I don't see the reason to pay $15 or so monthly to be able to have a database and be able to track card prices. Like I said, it's more of an aggregate of data to give you the average of a card's price. And it works really well for cards that sell in high volume. When you're dealing with low pop cards or very rare cards, you're not gonna have a very good like average sale point, because sometimes the points of sale are so far, few and far between, that one day it can sell for, let's say, $5,000, and then the next time it sells for three. You know, it's hard to determine the true value of a card that is very rare. At that point, you're really dealing with whatever someone's willing to pay for it. Now, just, you know, you should know, or, you know, remember, a card is only worth, or a collectible or an item is only worth what someone is willing to pay. And I think that's one thing we should always remember. You know, some people might have, you know, price points that they're willing to pay a higher price for a card to get it, and that's what causes the cards to rise in value. And, you know, also, a card's value is worth whatever someone's willing to sell it for. And I think sometimes we forget that point, is that if a person's willing to sell it at a low price, then that sets that price point, or that provides a data point of a low price point, which will help bring down the average of the card. So yeah, it requires two, the buyer and the seller. If the seller is willing to sell at a low price, that brings the price down. If a buyer is willing to pay a higher price, that brings the price up. So, you know, when we have those types of different variables, it's kind of hard to determine what a card's true value is, because it's really dependent on the person who's buying and on the person who's selling. So at that point, you know, while I get it, I get what Card Ladder and Market Movers aims to do, is to provide data points for people that want to crunch the data, want to crunch the numbers, to find points of value, to find cards that are undervalued in order to be quote unquote smarter investors. But you know, if you, more oftentimes than not, if you know your stuff, if you know how the hobby operates, if you know your sets, if you know your pop reports, if you know what cards are popular, what players are popular, then you can go with your gut feeling as to what you feel you should pay for that card. I know this may be an unpopular opinion, but these are just my thoughts, and you know, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna leave the video at that. Like I said, I no longer use Card Ladder or Market Movers because I feel that it's irrelevant for myself. Now, you may have a different opinion, and that's cool. You know, we do what we want to do, we do what we like, but I think at the core, we must always remember that a card's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it, and a card's only worth what someone is willing to sell it at. And with that being said, my name is Josh, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.